want to say. I don't want to say that we don't want the randomly selected assembly to be unaccountable, but we don't want it to be accountable in electoral ways.
Okay.
And again, I just wanted to point out that since we don't hold juries to account, maybe we should not put such a burden of proof on a fundamentally democratic institution like a randomly selected body. Whereas I think it's natural to want more accountability for a slightly less democratic body like an elected assembly. So if you want, the accountability burden increases as you violate inclusiveness and equality.
Oh, I see. Okay. But that is actually kind of related to the sort of bigger question I had. I was wondering whether you have whether you say something about how these representatives are supposed to see themselves.
Yes.
Whether they're just kind of putting into place the things they believe are the right answers to these questions, or whether they should think of themselves as, in some ways, since they're acting on behalf of the rest of society, there's some sort of obligation to maybe reflect the preferences of the people who are actually there in the decision-making process.
So I haven't really thought very deeply about the psychology of and the self-perception of the juries, the randomly selected members, but my conception of representation for such an assembly is at the group level. So there's not any single individual who's necessarily representative of anyone. It's just they're a pixel in that picture.
Yeah.
But the group itself is representative. So they just have to act as who they are and tell their truth.
Right.
Use their brain.
Okay.
Judge independently. That's how I picture it.
But that's not how people in Congress think of themselves, right?
But no, I know it's completely different. But that's why I think the models are so different, and we can't judge them by the same criteria.
Yeah. So they're not supposed to see themselves as representatives in some ways. So they're not supposed to be burdened by this obligation to represent anyone else. They're just answering the question the way they themselves would answer.
Yes, and they will do it as a group, they will do it as a byproduct of all of them doing the thing they think is right and using their judgment. So maybe I should say something to clarify.
Yeah, because it's not just psychology, it's just that, we're talking about different roles, right? And people generally have some sense of, if I'm occupying this role, there are obligations that come with these roles, right? So if you're a father, there's this role, there's an obligation to come with being a father, a teacher, and so on. So they're representatives, right? Now, when you talk about the liquid system versus the randomness system, I think people who are in them would have very different understandings of what they are obligated to do as the representatives.
But for me, I can't let you use that term representative as if it meant you have to specify elected representative, and there are different types. There's the ethos of the autocratic representative, and the ethos of the elected ones are different. And the problem is that, and I hear it when you speak, that for you, the norms come from being an elected representative, because you use a representative in this generic way. And
I'm not elected to be a father. The different roles have obligations attached to them. Don't you agree with that general statement?
I agree with that.
So I don't think I'm assuming anything about being elected. I'm saying that representatives generally have obligations that come with them.
No, but you say representative obligation as if there were not a diversity of representatives. I want to
say there's of course no. So I think you're going to have to tell different obligation stories about everything. So I was wondering, if there's something you're interested in sort of working out over time. And they're not all the same, right? So I'm just kind of curious about that, because I think I think every representative will have some understanding of what they're supposed to be exactly doing there, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing that, for instance, jurors would have to worry about in a jury. Like, am I here speaking just for myself, or do I have to sort of worry about what people like me think about things like this? Right? I mean, you have two very different answers to the same question, and depending on how they see their roles, jurors are not elected either. Depending on how they see their roles, they would actually have completely different answers to the question. So,
I don't know what people like me would mean for one person. I just, you're not a statistical category all by yourself. It's just so you have to be just yourself, and anyway.
Well, let's say you're the only black person on a jury, right?
But okay, but the jury is very small, so that's. I'm thinking of large assemblies where hopefully there won't be just one person who has that burden.
Well, the functions are different. If you're in a legislature, you're talking about the future. If you're a jury, you're judging the past. That's a distinction from Aristotle. You're not doing the same thing.
Well, that's true. So there's only so much I can, so much comparison I can.
Well, yeah, it will change depending on the number of people. I mean, but that's a kind of burden.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, you were thinking of a small jury, and I kept thinking about the large.
Well, even if it's large, I think like black people will say, I have to say something about what it means to be black. If you're making a decision, sometimes and they don't all think that. Maybe they shouldn't think that. It's not clear actually a lot of times, right?
Okay,
but aren't they supposed to be vetted at the beginning? You know that when you, in order to be a juror, you have to be. You get questions, right? Are you going to be?
Yeah. So I'm talking on the general level. Yeah, we could talk specifics. I mean, or let's say you're talking about a situation where you have a highly progressive understanding of what consent looks like, right? But no one else agrees with you. But you're sort of in a rape case, and everybody else says this is not rape, but you think it's rape, right? But if you think you're representing the rest of the community, you might feel like, well, maybe I should go with what everybody else thinks.
Aren't they supposed to enforce the law? I mean, that's the.
Well, you're supposed to interpret.
Apply the law.
Jurors are often given powers to give content to the law, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, and because the terms are like, what is torture? Well, you're going to have to decide what torture means. Right? What is consent? You're going to have to decide what that means. And then I think a lot of times jurors just decide, well, this looks like torture to me, right? And if they see themselves as representatives, they might give one answer. If they see themselves as, I have a very idiosyncratic view, but I'm here, and while I'm here, I'm going to try to put in place my own understanding of it.
So that's super interesting. I don't know. My intuition is that as members of a large assembly, they should just do what's right to them. If you're the only black person in that group, then maybe it's fine for you to think that, okay, I really need to speak on behalf of my community.
In the liquid model, you think that's how it works? You say there's all this delegation going on. When you feel some responsibility?
No, so in the liquid model, it's much more a classic electoral thing. So
Yeah.
So I had just a quick answer to your first question about how would the new legislation done by this body of administrative people fit with the pre-existing legislation. So I like this question. That's a very good question. I'm not sure how to answer it, but I know that, for example, it's just really, especially hard with international treaties and the apparatus of agreements that are already there and put pressure on democratic sovereignty at the local level.
Totally.
That's a real tension that I just don't know how to solve it. But I know in the Icelandic case, they ran into it frontally because so they had this old constitution with a revision, an amendment to the rights section that had been done in 1995 by legal experts to align the 1944 constitution with international treaties. So they had fixed it.
Yeah.
And then when the Council of 25 started from scratch and they said, we're going to write a new constitution, they completely ignored that, started from scratch, and basically ignored the formulation from international treaties that Iceland had previously signed. So now one problem with this new version is that they kind of were in tension and perhaps even in violation of. But on the other hand, you wonder, like, what does democratic sovereignty mean if not the ability to rewrite your own social contract, including in violation of international treaties, right? So I don't know. I don't have an answer about it.
You want to say something?
Oh no, it's like 6:27. This was to 6:30. I think they have something at.
Okay, well, I just have one thing to another fly in the ointment here. So you said that you liked certain aspects, at least, of the ancient Athenian model, and one of the things that relates also to, I'm sorry, I missed your name, is that when it came to office holders, which you know, there were two processes which were used to vet the office holders. One was dokimasia, right? So that people who went, so obviously Rich Scott would be able to serve in office, right? Because $510 million is something that really qualifies you to represent the poor people of the state. Anyways, but you have dokimasia, so which vetted people who were office, and then Euthanae, who was the process by which you had to account for what you did, right? And so there were these two processes, before and after your service in an office, which were important for making the occupation of the office something that generally served the public, right? And I wondered if you thought about, translating those as well into these institutional processes, or whether or not that's just too complicated these days.
Well, so on the face of it, I don't like it, because it creates an extra barrier to entry, and so that goes straightforwardly against inclusiveness and equality. So I'm not sure what the rationale was for the ancient Greeks, actually.
I think it was like with courts now. I mean, if you have a tie to, if you have a partial commitment, or if you have interests, that would prevent you from serving properly in this court, then you have to divulge them, and then we have to decide whether or not they are.
No, I'm sure a certain amount of vetting would probably be a good idea.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure a literacy test or an age limit or a wealth condition would be relevant or.
Yeah. And one other thing with respect to what we were talking about before in terms of how, in fact, the functions of jurors and assemblymen, they actually do bleed into each other. But as you know, representation can be understood in two ways. Top down, you represent God or something, or bottom up, right? You represent the people. So, and that often that gets confused, and it's important to be clear about what, how you're understanding the term. And I suppose you discuss, in addition to Bernard Manin, right, the distinctions that Pitkin made and how they.
So actually, I don't discuss Pitkin because I find her extremely confusing.
Well, it's possible.
I honestly, I get nothing from Pitkin. I just find that dated and not helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to the debate between Mansbridge and Rayfeld, which for me it's been much more enlightening.
Well, you at least have mandate representation versus Burkean representation, right? Top down, representing the whole, and which could be another version of either Burkean or Hobbesian representation, which also is top down, or bottom up representation, which can only work for Rousseau if people, in fact, are thinking alike. Basically.
Right.
No. Anyways, I'm just.
The
more
delegate versus trustee model.
Right, delegate versus
trustee. But for my purposes, it doesn't.
Okay.
Nothing matters.
Okay.